Review of Vietnam's economic highlights in 2015. Vietnam gears up for integration via free trade agreements. Hello and Happy New Year to you all. I hope you had a wonderful celebration of New Year's Eve, and it's time to settle down for the first episode of Bizline in 2016. And what's the better way to start off with a review of top economic highlights in 2015? Let's take a look.
– 2015 is considered a year of integration for Vietnam's economy, with a flurry of free trade agreements underway. On May 5, 2015, Vietnam and South Korea officially signed the Vietnam-Korea Free Trade Agreement after 2 years of negotiations. On May 29th, Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng and his counterparts from the Eurasian Economic Union, or EEU's member states, signed a free trade agreement, bringing the total number of FTAs signed so far to 10. – 2015 marked the conclusion of negotiations of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP.
We, the trade ministers of Australia, Brunei Darussalam, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, the United States, and Vietnam are pleased to announce that we have successfully concluded the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
The TPP is considered the largest trade deal in history, representing 800 million people and 40% of global GDP. Also this year, the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, or EVFTA, officially concluded. The EVFTA is currently the most ambitious and comprehensive trade deal that the EU has ever conducted with a developing country. And with the ASEAN Economic Community commencing on December 31st, 2015 marks a cornerstone in Vietnam's entry into the global playing field.
2015 has been a difficult year for Vietnam's monetary and foreign exchange policies. The State Bank of Vietnam broke its commitments to cap growth at 2% this year, amid the U.S. Federal Reserve rate spike and sudden sharp yuan devaluation. On August 12, 2015, the SBV decided to adjust the exchange rate band from about 1% to about 2% immediately after the Chinese yuan devalued to a 3-year low on August 11th. On August 19th, the SBV continued to devalue the Vietnamese dong by an additional 1% against the US dollar and widened the trading band for the Vietnamese dong to 3%. Overall in 2015, the SBV has depreciated the dong by 3% against the greenback and widened the dong over dollar trading band from 1% to 3%. Experts believe that these moves have enabled the dong to have greater room to move amid increased volatility on international and local markets. This can help ensure stability for the forex market and the competitiveness of Vietnamese export goods.
Vietnam set a goal to equitize 432 state-owned enterprises in 2014-2015. Yet to date, the country has been unable to finish this goal. As of December 2015, Vietnam has equitized a total of 344 state-owned enterprises, including a number of parent companies of large corporations. However, the result is more positive than the 2006-2010 periods, when the equitization process met only 30% of its target. The government has also announced plans to withdraw capital from Vinamilk and FPT. These moves have stimulated the market, pushing the reform process of Vietnam's state enterprises.
"2015 is considered a remarkable year for the Vietnamese economy in terms of improving the business environment and national competitiveness. There have been all-out efforts from the government, ministries, sectors, and businesses. Vietnam has been on the way to meeting the improvement requirements set by two resolutions, both marked number 19, which were issued in 2014 and 2015. Since the later one, the 2015 release resolution number 19 was introduced. The time needed for taxpayer to fulfill administrative procedures has been reduced to 121.5 hours. Meanwhile, time required for export-import related administrative procedures has also been significantly reduced to between 13 and 14 days. 2015 also witnessed the introduction of the amended enterprise law, investment law, and housing law, which are supplemented with many supportive regulations for businesses. Also in this 2015 Ease of Doing Business rank, the World Bank has lifted its ranking for Vietnam from 93rd to 90th out of 189 global economies.
"2015 marks the deadline for the Vietnamese financial system to finish a master plan to restructure its banking system over the 2011-2015 period. To date, 17 weak commercial banks have ceased to exist in the market through a host of merger and acquisition activities, purchase of common stocks, and even more drastic measures. Most recently, the State Bank of Vietnam, the country's central bank, bought out 3 commercial banks at zero Vietnamese strong. These tough moves are considered unprecedented but necessary to ensure the health of the Vietnamese banking system. The central bank's determination to restructure the financial market and resolve bad debts has been highly appreciated by international credit rating agencies. A report by Moody's showed their positive outlook for the Vietnamese economy. The rating agency rates Vietnam at B1, one level higher than the previous year. This is due to the country's stable economic growth, stable assets, and the high liquidity of the financial market. Bloomberg also forecasts positively on the economic situation of Vietnam, saying that investors' confidence has been much improved following the restructuring efforts and many successful merger and acquisition transactions.
" 2015 saw continuous global oil price reductions, reaching a 6-year record low of $43 per barrel. This has big but both positive and negative impacts on the Vietnamese economy. Specifically, each $1 drop in the global oil price will result in large losses for the state budget's revenue, which is being estimated at $45 to $55 million. There have been concerns over the negative impact of the global oil price plunge on total government expenditure. Nevertheless, according to economic experts, oil price reductions have been impacting the domestic economy in a positive manner. Lower oil prices will result in lower prices of its derivative products, namely petrol prices. As a result, consumers will benefit from lower prices of commodities, such as fertilizer, plastic products, and so on. Therefore, businesses can expand their operations and in return benefit the economy. However, regarding the continuous state budget deficit, this may bring in more public debt. If the case even gets worse, public debt may climb and rapidly reach its peak at 64.9% of GDP, almost the limit of 65% public debt proposed by the National Assembly.
Those are top 6 economic highlights of 2015. We'll continue with a discussion on prospects for Vietnam through free trade agreements in our crosstalk. Over the past few years, Vietnam has been quite active in signing free trade agreements with countries throughout the world. And 2015 witnessed significant developments in this regard, with Vietnam signing free trade agreements or FTA with Korea, the Eurasian Economic Union, conclusion of negotiation for the FTA with the EU and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and of course the ASEAN Economic Community, which officially took effect from January 1st this year. In this special edition of Bizline, let's delve into this range of free trade agreements to explore what's in store for the country in this increasingly integrated economy. We have invited to our studio today Ms. Từ Thúy Anh, Associate Professor of Economics and also Dean Faculty of International Economics at Foreign Trade University. Thank you very much for being here with us in our show today.
Thank you.
Now let's start with the ASEAN Economic Community. Compared to other ASEAN countries, Vietnam's economy is not as big, but its population is ranked third. So how can being in AEC benefit Vietnam?
Taking part in AEC is going to bring a lot of benefits to Vietnam. One, Vietnam can expand exports to the neighboring countries with lower transaction cost, lower transportation cost, insurance, and so on. Second, the FDI to ASEAN countries, including Vietnam, is going to become more attractive. That is something we call the economies of scale effect, because the ASEAN is going to be having a larger population of more than 600 million people, and that becomes a lot more attractive than any single country alone, such as Vietnam.
And now let's put these benefits in a wider context. As Vietnam are negotiating and also have concluded several free trade agreements with Korea and the Eurasian Economic Community, and also the EU and also the TPP. What are the benefits when all of these free trade agreements are implemented?
When all of these FTAs to be in place, we can see tremendous benefits to Vietnam. One, it's still in terms of expansion of exports, but to a lot larger markets, including the US, EU, Korea, and Russia, and so on. These markets have been very difficult to access due to high trade barriers, including both tariff and non-tariff barriers. And now most of these trade barriers are removed, and therefore it's going to create a lot of opportunities for Vietnam's goods to export to these markets. Two, in terms of investment, especially FDI. Since 2013, we see large amounts of FDI coming to the sectors such as textile and garment, electronic sectors, in order to benefit from the rules of origin, the production networks, and so on.
2015 could be regarded as a year characterized by increasing international integration as Vietnam concluded talks and implemented new free trade agreements. Many of them are new generations FTAs with high criteria, reflecting Vietnam's increasingly strong and comprehensive integration process.
Đây là những hiệp định mà thế hệ mới, cái mức độ mở cửa thị trường rất là lớn. Nó đã tạo điều kiện cho doanh nghiệp Việt Nam và nền kinh tế Việt Nam tiếp cận với thị trường. Nếu mà cái mức độ giảm thuế nó giảm như thế này thì rõ ràng là các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam sẽ có cơ hội để chúng ta đẩy mạnh xuất khẩu. Đồng thời về nhập khẩu ấy, chúng ta có thể đa dạng hóa cái thị trường nhập khẩu để không phụ thuộc vào một cái thị trường mà chúng ta trước đây vẫn là, ví dụ thị trường Đông Bắc Á và thị trường ASEAN.
With the recent formation of the ASEAN Economic Community on December the 31st, Vietnam will have more opportunities to integrate into the regional and global economy.
Thực ra thì cái cam kết cao nhất của chúng ta về tự do hóa hàng hóa là cam kết trong khuôn khổ ASEAN. Ở đó thì chúng ta hướng đến là tự do hóa 100%, tất cả các mặt hàng thì đều dỡ bỏ những hàng rào thuế quan. Thế nhưng mà với các nước mà ngoài khối ASEAN thì hiệp định EU là một trong những cái hiệp định mà đặt ra cái tiêu chuẩn tự do hóa thuộc loại cao nhất.
Approximately 99% of Vietnam good tariff barriers will be removed when entering the EU market, which contributes to boost bilateral trade exchange.
Khi hiệp định được ký kết và có hiệu lực, tôi chỉ nói riêng về vấn đề mở cửa thị trường. Theo tính toán thì chúng ta sẽ tăng được từ 4 cho đến 6% kim ngạch xuất khẩu hàng năm so với cái mức tăng bình thường không có hiệp định.
Hưởng lợi nhất thì là những cái mặt hàng mà hiện nay chúng ta đang xuất khẩu với kim ngạch lớn nhất, đó là dệt may, giày dép, những mặt hàng nông sản, thủy sản.
International integration is no longer just a trend, it has become a must. However, preparations are needed by both the government and businesses so that Vietnam can avoid possible pitfalls associated with free trade and continue its road to global integration.
Is it necessary for Vietnam to participate in that many free trade agreements?
We see a whole lot different between the FTA we mentioned now and the FTA that we usually talk about before. We can name a few characteristics. One, it's going to deal with a high levels of trade liberalization. It's going to cover almost all sectors, not just selected sectors like the old ones. And it's going to be not only on trade on goods, but also on services that make the commitment to be a lot stronger than the old FTAs and even the commitment under the WTO. And two, in terms of the scope, we see that the new generations of FTA deal not only with trade in goods and services, but also with some other commitments such as the SOE, the government procurement, the labor standards, environmental standards that are very complicated. Three, we see that the new generations of FTA do not only deal with the trade liberalization, but also with the institutional reforms, the policy, the economic, domestic institutions, domestic regulations, and that are relatively complicated. And four, we deal not with the small economies, but the giant economies in the world, such as the US, the EU, Korea, and maybe in the future, the China with the RCEP. And therefore, we see that all FTAs have pros and cons, and preparations for each FTA is going to bring its own luck. FTAs do not go significantly beyond the current WTO rules. And therefore, the FTA commitments are complement rather than substitutes. The attention Vietnam should pay on when we have multiple FTA in place at the same time maybe is that Vietnam should plan ahead in terms of implementation. What should go first, what should go second, and so on. So, for example, if we meet the requirement for Vietnam-EU FTA, then we may meet the requirement for TPP and so on. And the plan here may go even to the sector level, not only at the economy level as a whole. It's very important to go really in the industry level.
According to experts, there are still many difficulties ahead in 2016 as the world economy is still full of uncertainty and Vietnam has not fully prepared for future challenges. In terms of legal framework, many documents related to tax and customs procedures are not in line with the Trade Facilitation Agreement under the World Trade Organization, or WTO, or the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP.
Cái thách thức lớn nhất của năm 2016 là từ góc độ của chính phủ là làm thế nào để chúng ta có thể rà soát tốt các cái hệ thống chính sách pháp luật ở trong nước để mà đáp ứng được những cái yêu cầu cam kết của những cái FTA mới vừa được kết thúc đàm phán.
Despite efforts to ease business operations in the country, Vietnam still remains a complex startup environment. There are 10 procedures to undertake when starting a business in Vietnam. What's more, many tasks facing new corporate entities may be unfamiliar to overseas companies, which makes the undertaking far more rigorous.
Hiệp định thế hệ mới, ngoài cái nội dung tự do hóa rất là cao, còn đặt ra cái yêu cầu một nước phải có những cái thay đổi về mặt chính sách điều chỉnh đến thương mại đầu tư sao cho nó thuận tiện nhất cho doanh nghiệp. Và chính đây cũng là vấn đề đặt ra với Việt Nam. Và chính vì vậy mà khi mà chúng ta ký hiệp định thương mại tự do với EU cũng như là tham gia Hiệp định Đối tác Xuyên Thái Bình Dương, thì cái nhu cầu chúng ta cũng phải cải cách để sao cho tạo cái môi trường cạnh tranh, tạo cái môi trường kinh doanh thuận lợi ở trong nước.
Since đổi mới or the country's comprehensive economic reform, foreign direct investment inflows to Vietnam have been on the rise. Foreign capital also plays a significant role in the nation's economy, which occupies about 17% of the GDP. Nevertheless, this sector also prevails for domestic businesses. Besides the aforementioned issues, the lack of industrial deepening, dependence on major export markets, and a soft currency still remain problems with inadequate short-term solutions.
One may argue that developed economies are likely the beneficiaries of free trade agreements because they are well aware of trade regulations and they can easily establish technical barriers. How do you think about this?
The legal system of high-income country is more developed than the low-income country legal system, that's for sure. And therefore, it's going to be easier for them to use technical barriers to trade. Let's bring an example. On the 2nd of December of this year, 2015, the USDA released its final rule to establish an inspection program for U.S. farm-raised catfish and catfish-like imports. This rule will ultimately require countries exporting catfish and catfish-like products to the U.S. to meet safety standards. That's going to be the same as the rule applied to the catfish raised by U.S. farmers. The Vietnamese catfish and catfish-like exporters is going to be struggling, that's for sure. In order to export catfish, the whole process is from selecting seeds, raising fish, manufacturing fish products will be examined, will be controlled. And we do not know for sure how many companies is going to meet all of the kind of requirements here. Maybe the bright side of this story is that in the future we will have catfish farmers and companies to be standardized, and then we can export the catfish products to any markets in the world.
Vietnam is still considered not experienced enough to use trade remedies to protect domestic industry from any kind of material injuries that imported products can cause. So what are left to be done to solve this issue?
Most firms have heard about remedies, but they know very little about them. And therefore, we need to make more information available to them. We have to somehow improve the information providing channels. We also have to build capacity for firms to apply trade remedies. How can we do it? We have to prepare, improve the trade remedy related human resources. Somehow we have to advise firms to reserve some funds in order to use when they can really put the lawsuits in terms of trade remedies, because it's going to require tremendous resources in terms of finance. We also have to take remedies into account when firms create their business strategies. We cannot ignore it like what we are usually doing now. Another very important step is that we have to develop a coordination mechanism in terms of trade remedies. The coordination mechanism is going to be among firms regarding any specific case. It's going to be between firms and the competition agency, so that we can increase the probability of winning the case when it is in place.
Until October of 2015, Vietnamese exports have been subjected to 94 trade remedy cases in foreign markets. In contrast, Vietnamese firms have only engaged in trade remedy related to imported goods such as glass products, vegetable oil, and U.S. chicken drumstick. Trade remedies relating to dumping, subsidies, or safeguards are quite familiar to Vietnamese firms, but they have yet proven to be useful due to a number of reasons.
Để mà đi kiện phải có một cái số lượng doanh nghiệp đủ đáp ứng cái điều kiện của quy định pháp luật để đại diện cho cái ngành sản xuất trong nước. Thứ hai là cái vấn đề là nguồn lực đi kiện cái công cụ kiện phòng vệ thương mại không phải là một công cụ miễn phí. Để sử dụng được công cụ này thì các doanh nghiệp phải có tiền. Và cuối cùng một cái vấn đề cực kỳ quan trọng đấy là để mà đi kiện được thì anh phải tập hợp tất cả những cái bằng chứng để chứng minh cho cái cáo buộc của mình đối với hàng hóa nước ngoài nhập khẩu vào Việt Nam.
Out of the 4 cases submitted for dispute by Vietnamese firms, only 2 were successful as the firms were large enough and well prepared in terms of finance and human resources. Small and medium-sized enterprises should work together once trade remedies arise.
Như bản thân Hoa Sen chúng tôi hiện nay đang đối mặt với khoảng 4-5 vụ kiện. Cái vấn đề ở chỗ là doanh nghiệp, bản thân doanh nghiệp phải tự chủ động và phải liên kết trong hiệp hội. Và trong hiệp hội phải có cái bộ phận chuyên trách về lĩnh vực này và phải thuê những luật sư chuyên nghiệp.
In order to disseminate information on trade remedies to local firms, the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry has introduced a website focusing on the issue. Enterprises are provided with a transparent communication channel to learn and discuss this subject. Experts have appreciated this tool as firms need to be aware of the legal remedies in order to better utilize them.
Những cái nước có kinh nghiệm người ta có những cái chiến lược rất bài bản cho việc truyền thông. Ví dụ trước cái vụ kiện đấy người ta sẽ tiến hành những cái chiến dịch truyền thông như thế nào để gọi là raise cái vấn đề lên, để nêu cái vấn đề lên và tạo dư luận xã hội, tạo ra một cái sự ủng hộ trong bản thân cộng đồng doanh nghiệp.
Vietnam will remove 80 to 90% of taxes on imported goods following the effective free trade agreements. The threat of increased competition is real. So experts have suggested on some improvements in terms of policies to improve local business awareness about trade remedies as well as to connect firms in utilizing these trade tools.
There may be a case where a non-TPP country, such as Thailand, can benefit from TPP via Vietnam by opening subsidiaries or joint ventures in Vietnam. How would this affect Vietnam's domestic industries?
The case of Thailand is very obvious in this kind of issues. Thailand, since the last 3 or 4 years, have bought some supermarkets, some convenience stores in Vietnam, and that's how they can take part in the distribution sectors in Vietnam. Vietnamese consumers usually like the Thai consumption goods a lot because of good quality, because of good reputation, because of the after-sale services. And the thing is that the prices are not a lot higher than the one produced by Vietnamese firms. And that's why, in some sense, we see that Vietnamese consumers are better off when we buy Thai products even in Vietnam. But the distribution firms in Vietnam are the ones who are worse off because we have to strongly compete with Thai firms even in the domestic markets.
What lessons from the WTO can Vietnam draw in order to apply to post-2015 era of deep integration?
The nature of integration is not that an economy is going to be opened up unconditionally. It's rather that the tariff is going to be cut gradually. So, we cut the tariff, and therefore the goods from the foreign market is going to enter our market. As long as the market share taken by a foreign company is large enough, for example 8%, then a signal is going to be sent to the government. And in that case, the government is going to think about using some technical barriers to trade. So therefore, what do our firms have to do? Well, our firms really have to think about ways to innovate, to invest on research and development, on trademark, to build their reputation. And so there's no other ways around to succeed when we have multiple FTAs to be in place.
Once again, thank you very much. It's our pleasure to have you with us in our show today. 2015 came to an end with Vietnam gaining positive achievements in signing and concluding negotiations for various free trade agreements. However, as our guest has pointed out, much is left to be done to enable the economy to take full advantage of these agreements and at the same time protect itself from intensified competition. How will Vietnam's economy fare in 2016? Stay in touch with Bizline for more economics and business news throughout the rest of the year. Many thanks for being with us. You can always watch our program online at vietv4.vn or youtube.com/vietv4go. Happy New Year and until next time.